Today we're diving into Foxhole Update 61, which brings a massive overhaul to base building. There will be new structures, new ways to modify buildings, new equipment, and major changes to how bases are attacked and defended. This update is going to completely reshape the battlefields of Foxhole. Let's get right into it and talk about the new tier bunker garrisons. Whether you're new or have hundreds of hours in Foxhole, getting into base building has always been tough. There's a lot of hidden knowledge and tricks that make it hard to learn, but this update is looking to change all that. The devs are streamlining the building system so that players can easily understand how bunkers are built. For example, some structures didn't have a tier 1 version before, making long-term planning frustrating. Now that's been fixed. Early war building should be much smoother going forward, but they have also added a new layer of complexity: structural integrity. For example, you can now place defensive garrison pieces next to each other, but that doesn't mean that you should. Builders will need to think more carefully about how to balance strength with flexibility. I'm really excited to see what players come up with and how this shakes up the bunker meta with all these new structure additions. Next, there's a new construction tool. It's not a vehicle, but something you move with a crane to help with construction. The idea is to make building feel more like an actual construction site. The devs want to reduce the repetitive gameplay loop of just holding left click and instead introduce new building interactions. This doesn't necessarily make building faster, it still requires multiple players to be efficient, but it makes the building loop less boring and it changes how you build. Next, we have the addition of large structure foundations. These 3x3 bunker pieces are used for building storm cannons, intel centers, and nuke sites, and now all of these structures require rare metals. I honestly love this change. Rare metals in the past have mostly been used for ships, but now there's a real decision to be made. Do you use this resource for naval dominance, or for powerful land structures? Another change that I like is that storm cannons now unlock at the same time rare metals begin dropping, which should end the storm cannon race and make things more balanced across both factions. Next, there's a new bunker modification that adds resistance against artillery attacks. Players have been asking for this for a long time. Artillery duels are a huge part of the game, and now there's finally a countermeasure. That said, there is a downside. Using these shelters reduces the overall structural integrity of your bunker, so builders will have to think carefully about when it's worth it to build these. The fire suppression system is another bunker modification. It'll automatically put out fires, so you won't have to run around with buckets as often. It will still require power and water to operate, so it's not free, but it helps remove some of the micromanagement and gives defenders more room to focus on other strategies. Next, we have bunker placement changes. I believe this is going to shake up the meta completely. Expect very different wars going forward. There's going to be new ways to build, defend, and attack. With this change, the devs focused heavily on cleaning up bugs and removing hidden mechanics so that anyone can jump into building without needing to know obscure tricks. It's all about accessibility now, which I love to see. Some balance changes that they made are that you can now build concrete bunkers without having to tech into it. You'll still need to upgrade for garrison AI, but base concrete structures can be built right away. I think it might be time the devs introduce a cement truck into the game. This should make the early to mid game very interesting and might even slow fronts down even more. One other thing that is going to be different with bunkers moving forward is how they are powered. Power systems inside bunkers have been completely overhauled. You no longer need to do the pipe modification to distribute the power. Now the engine works like an internal battery and powers everything it's connected to. This is going to make things much simpler for newer builders. Next, we have the addition of strong points and trenches. This is something players were already making in the game within trenches, but had to use bugs in the game to make them work. The devs just decided to give us the ability to do it on our own, without making it so you had to know some secret knowledge to know how to build them. If you haven't noticed by now, the common theme of this update is making it so that anyone can jump right into building. One last addition the devs have added to bunkers is now you can place tripods inside bunkers properly. Before, they had to awkwardly sit on top of bunker pieces. This gives defenders more cover and opens up cooler defensive options. I'm ready to last stand LARP every base now. Now with all these changes to bunker bases, the devs certainly had to give us better ways to break them. Bunkers can now be breached piece by piece, depending on the structural integrity. The lower the integrity, the easier it is to breach. This will give attackers another option and route to attack from when sieging a base. You can also use special equipment like Havoc charges that can breach bunkers without reaching the breachable health threshold. And one of the final things being added for builders is a new structure called the Underground Fortress. This structure will serve like a safe house and be a spot that you can deploy in. One of the neat features of this is that it can only be destroyed from inside. You will need to walk down with high explosives to take it out. Artillery won't be able to destroy it. The devs had this to say about the fortress. The goal is to force an attacker to move into an area. If you built this next to a storm cannon at the top of a tall hill somewhere, The enemy would be forced to storm all the way to the top to completely dislodge you." End quote. Overall, I'm excited to see where players decide to build these and how the battles around them will play out. One other thing about this new underground fortress is that a bunch of us were hyped in the chat about the possibility of underground warfare in the future. Unfortunately, one of the devs made this comment in the Reddit Q&A, stating that it's doubtful that we will ever see any expansion like that. Maybe if I promise to eat another shoe, I can help make it happen. Next, we have some changes to early war. The main goal with these changes are to change the pace of how early war looks on the front lines. Before this change, it was better for factions to go more on the offensive, rather than take time to build up defenses. This change should give defenders more of an advantage to take time to build up bases instead of just attacking. This will help both sides establish their initial defensive lines at the beginning of a war. You can see from these changes that the devs are wanting to add a bit more balance to the defenders at the start of the war rather than the attackers. That's why we see less mammons, more BMATs, shovels, sandbags, and barbed wire. I don't think we should be seeing as many big pushes on the front line during day 1 or 2 of the war like we have in the past. Now here are some other changes that are coming with this update that aren't directly related to building. After almost 2 years, naval players are finally getting proper uniforms. They help with movement in the water and bucket carrying. So mainly in my opinion, it'll be more for LARPing. And another note about these uniforms, I think they should make the Warden uniform look a bit more blue. I almost thought that the Colonials were the only ones getting a uniform after I saw these. Next, we have a new ammo type for the Wardens to help breach bunkers easier. It will be a short-range rocket that specializes in breaching bunkers and destroying enemy structures. And for the Colonials, there will also be a 250mm shell that will cause similar damage. Here's the Colonial heavy cannon that will use 250mm shells. It kinda looks like a modern Civil War cannon. And the revamped King Jester will be using the Warden Shatter missiles. Hopefully this will make the Jesters actually useful on the battlefield. The high explosive rockets that were once in the King Jester will be moved to the new Warden rocket armored car. I hope to see a lot of these on the battlefield as well. Next, the devs announced short wars. I'm really glad that the devs announced this and will be establishing what wars are short wars moving forward. For those of you that don't know, just recently in War 122, the war had been cut short by the devs to allow for a new update to come out. Overall, the player base was not very happy that the devs were able to intervene and end the war themselves. It looks like the devs have heard our feedback and will let us know in the future which wars will be short wars, or what most of the player base will call break wars. They stated that these wars will not happen often and will normally only occur right before an update is about to be released. They also stated that draws will be a possibility. It will be interesting to see if we will ever see our first war that ends in a draw. Next, we have some general features that are coming with this update. All rocket artillery vehicles are getting some extra range. Buildings that are on fire will now be suppressed. Construction vehicles and cranes are now built at garages and facilities. They can no longer be built in town halls or relic bases. Right away, there was a lot of controversy around this from the player base. I believe this is going to change the fronts dramatically. Now construction vehicles and cranes are going to be a lot more valuable and will need some extra protection. This is what one of the devs had to say about the change. What we would like is to build on the gameplay of these vehicles and make it cohesive with the rest of the game. If we can give these vehicles back their importance, their gravity, then seeing one and killing one could be a major turning point in a battle, not just buying your team 10 more minutes until they build the next one." End quote. The dev also left bullet points to address the concern with this change. In summary, more cranes and construction vehicles will be available at the start of the war. They believe the distance factor shouldn't change much as facilities can be built anywhere. You can also use the mass production facility and crate them and make them deliverable to the front lines. And their hope is that we will see more advanced construction vehicles in the game as well. I'm a little skeptical with how this will play out, but with changes like this, I'm always willing to give it a try to change up the experience of any war. Now back to the other general features. There is now a loadout button in hospitals. There will be a pipe structure category. Facility owners will rejoice over this change. And finally, minor map changes in Silcan Shelf. And that's still not all. We have some changes to 20mm rounds in buildings to unify them with their infantry counterpart. The biggest takeaway from this change is that AT pillboxes now fire at infantry, which is a bit of a nerf to partisans who used to sneak past them. The devs say they'll be inaccurate and slow firing, with rifle pillboxes still being the main anti-infantry defense, but we'll see how it plays out in a war. If this makes cutting off Logi on the front lines harder, then I'm not going to be happy about this change. Next, we have hit registration improvements. This one's pretty simple. Hit registration should feel better when latency is high. The devs stated they'll be looking for a lot of feedback from players on the dev branch with this. Next, we have a pipe fluid mechanic update. Overall efficiency with pipes should feel better now and is more accessible to the average player. As someone who has never messed with pipes, I really appreciate this. I've always been too scared to mess around with them. I'm excited to learn more about pipes when this update comes out. And finally, something from the patch notes. I normally don't get into the weeds too much with these patch notes during these videos, but one thing I will mention is that I'm sure we are all glad to see the shotgun has been slightly nerfed. We will see if these changes make any sort of difference on the battlefield soon. If you would like to see other little changes like this that are happening, I will leave a link to the patch notes in the description below. Those have been all the changes that are coming with Update 61. Here is a roadmap for what we have coming in the future. Update 62 will be next, and should be a much smaller update focusing on tweaks, game balance, and bug fixes. And then after that, we finally have the Airborne update. Here's what the devs had to say about the Airborne update.
We are still focused on the Airborne update, but I think it was pointed out to us that we should, that we wouldn't feel right about going into Airborne without at least fixing some of those core problems that we tried to fix 2 patches ago.
We are working on Airborne in the background. It's active content and features being worked on still, but we did carve out more time to focus on the builder sides for a while, and that will impact the Airborne schedule a bit, and we're still having to figure out what that impact is, and we'll have more updates on that in the future, so stay tuned on that.
My prediction right now is that Airborne will release sometime at the end of August or early to mid-September, assuming everything goes as planned. Overall, I'm really excited about all these changes that are coming for builders, and that the devs are trying to make building more accessible for everyone. Builders, do you feel like this was a good update? Are there any changes that the devs missed? Is anyone excited for anything specific with this update? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support. Make sure to subscribe for more Foxhole content. I'll see you out on the battlefield. Cheers.